Hi everyone. So we're back on and doing an Instagram live with Lynn from the Women of Color Coalition for Biden Harris. Let me check if she is on. Let's see. She's still not on. Oh, there we go. There she is. She is gonna be coming on so we can have a little chat. Hey Lynn.
Hey, thanks
How's
for
it
having
going?
me.
Thank
Great,
you
great
so
to be
much
here.
for coming on.
Sure.
We're matching. We're doing the black and kind of neutral color background.
Awesome.
um, so let's just give people like a few more minutes, and then we can do like an introduction of who we are, what we do,
Hey,
why we do it, and talk about some issues that are challenging our communities.
absolutely.
But how are you? Where are you right now?
Currently in Arkansas. I was here pre-pandemic and I had plans to go to the East Coast and then, life got in the way. Yeah, I didn't have a pandemic on my 2020 bingo card, I'll say that.
I
Yeah.
don't think many people did. I actually, fun
Yeah.
fact, or not so fun, I had this like little sticker on my computer just like being super excited about 2020, like, and I put it right at the beginning of the year, and now I still have it just like as a reminder, and it's just like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's not that great.
When things hopefully get better, you'll be able to check those off your list. So just keep them close by. That's what I'm doing too. So, yeah.
Just keeping those lists, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was in college, I used to just keep random sticky notes of things, right? Like things I wanted to do, people I
I
wanted to
have my
meet, or
sticky notes here.
yeah, and just like
I
they were
feel,
covered, or rather, my dorm room was covered with those. Um,
yeah.
but let's see, let's just give one more minute. I'm
Sure.
always like a big fan of like starting right on time. So if
Me too, me too.
any time I'm like running late, I'm like, oh my god, I'm running late. Which
This is,
is that's when you know your mother's voice has gotten in your head.
yeah, yeah. This is actually my first live, so it's great to be doing this with you.
But you were right on time. My first one was terrible. Like I was having technical difficulties, and
Oh
I was like,
no.
her. So this
I
was
was
much better.
I was praying the power didn't go out. We had some storms earlier, so I was like, please stay on. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in San Francisco, and it is hot. I mean, and I'm from Texas, and that's heat and humidity, but
Yes.
we have air conditioning, and we're like ready for it. But here, like, no one has air conditioning.
You don't have air
My house
conditioning?
doesn't have air conditioning. No one. Well, most people in San Francisco don't. And right now we are like at 86, almost 90 degrees.
Oh my goodness. I could not
Yeah,
even imagine doing that without air.
yeah. No,
Goodness.
it's the climate change.
Yes, for
Uh,
sure.
yeah. Okay, I think we can start now.
Oh,
So welcome everyone. My name is Shidume, and I started Latinas For Biden. So if you're following us, I started that. And we've been working with a lot of people to create this account where we can focus on Latinx issues, not just pertaining to Latinas specifically. And today we are so happy to chat with Lynn from the Women of
oh,
Color Coalition for Biden Harris. And yeah, so we want to chat about, what are the issues that our communities are facing? What can we do right now, right? Like we still have 20 days to register and to vote, and people still have questions. People are still super confused as to, is Biden a socialist? Is Biden not a socialist? All these random questions that really get to the heart of why some people want to vote or not vote blue in this election. So Lynn, why don't you actually introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about you and why you're doing this?
yeah. Well, I'm Lynn Halliburton. I am a volunteer for Women for Biden, and I'm also an executive member of the Women of Color for Biden Harris coalition. And I was actually never really involved in politics. I worked in project management previously, and I got involved in politics because of, frankly, this administration. I never voted before. 2016, I sort of sat it out because I foolishly believed the polls, and I for sure thought Hillary was going to win. And plus, I live in a red state, so I didn't think like my vote mattered. But seeing the racism in this administration really made myself and this community, the Black community, feel really disenfranchised. And it wasn't until Biden's Charlottesville ad that I really felt like a politician understood the pain that racism has on my community, and I'm sure your community as well. And so I really wanted to take my power back. So I just thought, I need to take action and get involved. So I joined Women for Biden, and like they say, the rest is history.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, so for me, so again, I'm Shidume. I like Lynn, like I was never really quite into politics, right? Like I've definitely been one of those people that, sees things and donates and whatnot. But, like a few years back, I actually started getting more interested in just kind of seeing, again, from this administration and even prior to that, during, I started noticing things more when Bush was was the president. And I was in high school, right? And I was like, oh my God, we gonna go into another war? 9/11 happened and everything was so uncertain. And, as a teenager back then, like I was like, well, yeah, I'll go to war for this country, right? Like, what is this? What's happening? And I was worried. And I feel like that's when I somewhat started getting or just being more aware of what was happening around me and the people around me, right? Like my cousin actually enlisted and he went to Afghanistan, came back with injuries and things like that. And yeah, and now this round, I'm just seeing all of the division and all of the misinformation out there and just like straight on lies that are being said, instead of trying to create a government or a nation where people are, regardless of whether they're conservatives or Democrats, like they can come together and really work together, to move the country forward. Because bottom line is we do need each other, right? And there needs to be a place where all of us can come together and really take decisions that are not just going to benefit one group. So and I started noticing, for example, that I was like, oh, but I want this campaign to say more to my community. I want them to like talk the way we talk, so just like the little sprinkle of like sass and whatnot, which is kind of fun. It's always just and so so that's why I started Latinas for Biden and started working with Women for Biden. So like Latinas for Biden is like under the umbrella of Women for Biden. But yeah, so that's why I got involved. And fun fact also, I'm pregnant right now, so it's like,
oh, congratulations.
Oh, huge. But and I just can't stop thinking like what's gonna happen, in a few years when my kid is growing up and he is just like asking questions, about like, why are these people homeless? Why are these people like not paying enough taxes? Why do these people can't have health care? Like my parents don't have a 401k, and I keep telling them, what is your plan? You're gonna have to retire at some point. So yeah, so all of these things, and that's why I was like, okay, I can't just keep being pissy about it. We need to do something, like even if it's just like my little bit, because it adds up.
And that's great motivation that you want to make the world a better place for your child, like what better motivation is there? Because you certainly don't want your child to have to endure just the world that we were given, unfortunately, with this administration. Like that is a lot to be born into. The current climate of division and racism and just our institutions, they haven't failed us, but they're deteriorating under this administration. So yeah, you don't want your child or future children to be born in this, for sure.
Yeah. Um, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
even and with that, it's like one of the topics that I want to talk to you about and see how you feel and what you think about the current administration, why
Mm-hmm.
we should be voting blue. It's just socioeconomic inequality, right? Like that is a very real thing, and that just like historically, right? Like minorities have not had the same advantages as Caucasian families. Like
Mm-hmm.
up until recently, Portland, for example, Black families were not able to own homes. In certain, I
Yeah.
think it's actually most of the city.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
And
and
go ahead.
yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't feel like Black home ownership is a priority with this administration, and I know Joe and Kamala, it's both in their plans to really increase Black home ownership and also Black entrepreneurship, because I don't know if you read, but the statistic for Black women owned businesses is that we only receive like 20,000 for every 100,000 that a business gets. And Trump cut the MBDA budget, which is the Minority Business Development budget. He cut like 75% of that in his first couple years. So just seeing that Biden wants to invest in that budget and give Black people, in particular, that sort of access to be able to go into business for ourselves and have that freedom and opportunity that a lot of white people have is, it was reason enough for me to vote for Biden and Harris because, currently under this current climate with COVID, Black businesses have tanked, you know?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of Black businesses are suffering. Um, and one of the big things that, and it didn't even start with Joe Biden, but, back in like the 60s, right? Like in 50s, when unions were such a big thing. And
Mm-hmm.
then somehow now they are, a lot of companies are criminalizing them. If people want
Yes.
to start a union, they'll get fired, or
Mm-hmm.
they'll find a reason to fire people. And Biden wants to actually incentivize people to create unions and really collaborate with them so that people can have more security, right? Like right now, again, people are losing their jobs. That means that they're losing healthcare, right?
Yeah.
Like some people cannot afford that, and especially if you are a like a frontline worker, if you get sick and somehow you get laid off, or like the restaurant or the service industry, right? Like if it closes because it's all of those like small businesses are suffering, what are you gonna do? If you get COVID, it's so crazy expensive. Like, and if you go to the hospital and you have to be there for days, I think I saw the average was like over 100K that you would get
Yes. I
billed
that
to
too.
you. And most people, that means bankruptcy.
One
Like,
diagnosis away from bankruptcy, technically.
yeah,
That's how it goes, unfortunately.
yeah, exactly. And it's like I think right now there's not a ton of security for these workers, right? Like
There
you said, a
isn't.
lot of people are working or they're living paycheck to paycheck, and if they get sick, if they crash their car, or if one of their kids gets sick or something happens, a lot of communities have been suffering lately because of natural disasters, and sometimes the insurance won't cover certain things, or it'll take a long time for them to get a check for their homes or for their families or for whatever, right? Like, and what's happening to them? There's no real safety net for these people. And one of the great things that Joe wants to work on is just like really having workspaces that really protect these workers, where they receive benefits, right? Like most people like have to have like 2, 3 part-time jobs to make ends meet. Um, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just, and that's on top of the other, you know, family related um, things that they have to care and worry about. And still, like, if for most people that are working all those part-time jobs, most likely they're not getting all those benefits, right? Because most for more
Exactly.
most workplaces, you have to be full-time, and even when you're full-time, like you won't start getting benefits up until like what, like 3 months. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's maybe that's
Sometimes
about it.
6 months I've seen. Yeah. It is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
exactly. So people cannot wait for this.
No.
Um, so we need more protection and more quality of the benefits um, that are being provided. You know, because even sometimes when they do get benefits, it's like the bare minimum. Um, and there's just like so many things that could go wrong during those times. Um, you know, when people are like in those types of transitions. But I
Yeah.
mean, like even just like protection for women in the workspace, right? Like a lot of the burden is falling on women, and so many of them have been laid off, or you know, they can't work anymore because they have to take care of their families because someone is sick, or maybe their husband is the only or partner, it's the only breadwinner, or the bigger breadwinner.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I mean, even for women like me, right, that I'm pregnant right now, and actually I left my job and I started working full time for this campaign, and
Right.
like, are people going to hire me because I'm pregnant, right? Like even those questions, like it kind of comes up, like, yeah, technically it's illegal for them to not hire me just because I'm pregnant, but you never know, right? So there
It
has
can
to
be
be more protection.
covert. Absolutely. They'll find
Yeah,
a
exactly.
reason. But I was just thinking about when you were saying about women, women are taking the brunt of the COVID pandemic. We're the most laid off. And then also with school not being able to go into session, a lot of women are having to turn into teachers all of a sudden and try to find work, but also be like an instructor to their children, which,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we do our best as women, but we're not teachers and we're not giving each child what they need to have, a learning environment at home. It's sort of like a makeshift environment. And that is a lot of stress to put on women because there's no outlet. We already don't have an outlet for a lot of the stress in normal times, but can you imagine just the amount of stress under a pandemic and having to, work and focus on your survival needs, but also work to educate your children? Like, that is a lot. And it's because, frankly, this administration didn't handle this pandemic right. They played it down. And that's why women were forced to, have the burden of, you know, our children are not going back to school because of this administration. That is unfortunate. They didn't take it serious and they played politics. They tried to, you know, withhold um, PPE, withhold aid to states that needed it most because they were Democratic led states. And that's not what we need. And we're going into a second wave. And frankly, I'm like kind of scared because I'm thinking, like, is this the administration that I want to handle the next 4 years of a pandemic and to, distribute a vaccine? And I don't trust them to distribute a vaccine to the Black and Brown communities because this administration has played politics. They've, you know, had many racist incidences in their administration. So I absolutely do question if the communities that need it most, which is our communities, will receive a vaccine. That is a crucial worry. And, you know, that convinced me to go for Biden Harris because, I've seen him in action, Biden, when we had the Ebola outbreak. He listened to the scientists and the doctors. He didn't try to think that he knew more than what he did. Like he listened to the facts. And, I didn't see that sort of politicking that I see now, which is just very concerning.
Yeah, I mean, so in San Francisco, Well, actually, I mentioned earlier that I'm from Texas, so I grew up in Houston, and Houston is um, very diverse. A lot of Latinos there, and like the neighborhoods the two neighborhoods that where I grew up in Houston, um, the majority of people were Latinos, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the people live with it's a multi-generational household, right? Like you worry
Mm-hmm.
that if your kid actually does go back to school with some kind of precaution for COVID, um, what if they actually do get something and bring it back to a home where elderly people also live? And again, they're also families that are pretty low income,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to. These are the situations that they're in, and even if we do get a vaccine, even if we got it this year, right? Like I actually would be worried that it's just so fast, like the
I don't.
normal timeline for a vaccine to actually be effective, or to actually find a vaccine that actually works. It's not months, it's years. It really takes years.
It
um,
does.
so we would have to see, like, what are the side effects. We don't even know exactly what the side effects of COVID is, right? Are
Mm-hmm.
For example, we just found out about that 25-year-old that was confirmed that he got COVID for the second time, and some people are experiencing, after coming out of the hospital and being better, they're experiencing issues with their lungs, even issues with vision and
Right.
other things. And if we don't even understand the virus to begin with and really
Mm-hmm.
know what its lifetime even is, how can we come up
Mm-hmm.
with a vaccine? And just wearing a mask, it's like such a simple concept, and like it and trust me,
It
I
is.
hate wearing a mask outside. um
We all do, but it's
yeah,
essential.
it's
It saves
terrible,
our lives.
and it's essential. And just the fact that even Joe is like, oh, he's wearing a mask, right? And like Trump makes fun of him for it, but it's like you're protecting not only yourself but people around you. And just like
Yeah.
that simple fact that Trump's administration can't seem to grasp that concept, it makes me so, it's just infuriating. Like
Yeah.
they're having rallies where they're having these rallies and they're exposing children, and elderly people. And like, okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they might not get super sick, but they might bring it to someone else in their community
Exactly.
that could get very, very sick and just like make it last longer.
And I thought that was so admirable just to see Joe, when this pandemic began, when he started going out and about, just to see him wearing a mask. Like, I thought that was such a leadership moment, and that was the moment that we all needed. And because it's really incumbent on the president, somebody who is in charge, to set the tone for how you're supposed to take care of your health and the health around you, the people around you. And I was just very impressed that Biden felt comfortable to, set the tone. And that's what we need. We don't need someone who's going to make fun of someone wearing a mask. And what I will say about the vaccine is, if the scientists or Dr. Fauci tell us that a vaccine is available, I will believe them and take it. But if it's just Trump, then I don't trust him.
Yeah, I would not trust them. I mean, I would actually worry, considering everything that has come out, and everything that they have said behind closed doors. I would actually be worried that they would use our communities as guinea pigs.
Yes.
Um, and because that historically has been a thing, right? Like
Yes.
what has the government done to women in Puerto Rico to test um, birth control? Like it has been a thing where governments just decide to use a demographic and try this out. Let's see what happens to them first, you know? And
Exactly.
I would actually be so worried that if a vaccine comes out so fast, like that's what they would try to do. Um, but I mean, yeah, it's all of the challenges on top of the state of the world right now that, you know, COVID has come in and put upon us is not just, you know, the fact that so many families are losing people, you know, like
Yeah.
I'm adopted. So my birth mother
Mhm.
passed away earlier this year and I wasn't
Oh,
able to go, you know, and say goodbye. You know, her ashes are still sitting on my sister's table and I have
right.
not been able to go and see them or, you know, see my sisters. And her mother,
Yeah.
my grandmother, has not been able to see the ashes of her dead daughter. And that is something that COVID is responsible for. You know, there's just all this uncertainty that are happening. And it's not like that's like on the lighter, you know, kind of story, you know, like the people that
Sure.
are dying alone or just not getting the attention because they might not have insurance, which is a lot of members of our community
A lot of
that
them are at home
yeah,
alone.
they die
Yeah.
at home.
They can't afford to go to the hospital.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
exposing their families also, and just entire families that are getting exposed because one person, you know, caught it. But, you know, just like knowing that Joe wants to not only protect these families from the economic burden, but just reinforcing that we have to set, you know, certain measures in order for the country to move forward together because the economy is hurting, people are hurting not only emotionally but again like economically. um
Yeah.
and it's like we're going to be talking, even if COVID goes away like next year at some point, like we are going to be talking about it for decades to come, right? Like about the incompetency of this,
Hmm.
of the current administration and all of the
Yeah.
things that we could have done but they didn't do, given us the
Yeah.
information, you know.
They don't take responsibility, and also there's a lot of collective grief because we're I don't know if we've hit the number, but we're almost at 220,000 unfortunately
Mm-hmm.
have died. You know, that's a lot of people to lose, and you know, this administration doesn't acknowledge them.
No.
And that was one of the things that drew me to Biden is because he has that empathy. He knows what loss is, and he can actively help people grieve and heal, which is important.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like we need
Mm-hmm.
a president who can actually feel empathy for
Yeah.
people, you know, and it's not just because, you know, his son and his wife and his daughter have passed away, right? Like he is
Mm-hmm.
genuinely like a good guy.
That's who
And
he is. Yeah.
yeah, that is who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in contrast to this current president where, you know, he can't even, yeah, acknowledge or really share just the grief of the country.
Yeah.
Like he just can't do it.
Because we all know someone, we either know someone who lost their life directly or we know someone who had someone who lost their life. So we're all going through that collective grief, but what makes it unique is that we're all distant from each other, so we can't embrace each other. And that makes it even harder, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's kind of incredible, you know, that people are, you know, still finding the strength to go to work and do their job and have potentially someone back home or in the hospital and or having to take care of their kids while the other parent it potentially is, you know, in the hospital. And it's just so disappointing to see that, and not just Trump, his entire cabinet, his entire staff, they're the same. You know, the Senate is not pushing um, for a better way to take care of this. You know, because it's primarily Republican,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they're just blocking everything that the Democrats are trying to do.
Absolutely. They're prioritizing rushing in a Supreme Court nominee over passing a stimulus package that would help the American people. And for that is just despicable, frankly, because people still they're unemployed and they're trying to survive in a pandemic without money.
Yeah,
And
how? Go ahead.
yeah, for you to prioritize, rushing a nominee, which could wait till after the election, um, is just unthinkable.
Yeah, in what world is that more important than
Right.
actually creating a plan and a stimulus package for people that are hurting so much? Like,
Right.
how is that the priority right now? And especially someone who is willing to expose her kids and bringing them to like some party without wearing masks, where it has been confirmed that there was like a little outbreak from that one party or gathering that they had at the White House. Um, but yeah, but moving on, because we have like a few other topics to talk about. I wanted to talk about, and this kind of goes with it, like women's issues, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like historically, again, like women weren't given the right to vote up until like 100 years ago, and even then it was white women, right? Like a bunch of
Exactly.
minorities were not given rights to vote at the same time, and a lot of women of color were kind of left out of the history books, like during that fight. And
Mm-hmm.
we just kind of hear of like the big names, like Susan B. Anthony, which is, hey, it's great, thank you, but
Mm-hmm.
also acknowledge the women of color that fought for this right too, and they weren't given those same rights right away. And like Joe Biden wants to make sure that women have equal rights, equal pay, for the
Yeah.
same job. Um, equal,
How could you be
you know,
against equal pay? Yeah, I don't understand.
exactly.
For
It's
doing
like,
the same job.
if you're doing this in job, especially when you have no, or rather you have the same experience level as someone else,
Mm-hmm.
because I can almost see it's like, okay, doing the same job, but maybe this person has more experience doing it. Like, okay,
Right.
fine. But if you have the same like skill set and the same experience, then no, you need to get the same amount of pay, right? And
Exactly.
statistically, women with children are also paid less. They do not move forward in their careers as much or as fast as men who happen to also have kids, because men are seen as, just they're supporting a family and
Ugh.
they're more trustworthy. But somehow women who have children are not trustworthy,
Right.
because their families are going to come in first, and just having someone who is willing to acknowledge that we have not been paid equally,
Mm-hmm.
and that changes even um, depending on your ethnic background, right? Like white women
Absolutely.
make more money than black women
They
and more
do.
money than Latinas, and even just that, just having someone who is gonna really fight for that wage gap that we
Yeah.
currently have, and and it varies from state to state, right? Um, but yeah, just
Even
like
paid time
giving women
off. Yeah.
tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I hear a lot of stories about women who have children. They're penalized at work for taking off for, emergency with their child, which shouldn't be the case either.
Yeah, I mean, and again, right now we are about to basically about to get a new Supreme Court justice that
Yeah.
says that she's not gonna revoke or try to revoke Roe v. Wade, but it's very likely that she would, right? And just
Absolutely.
having the right to protect and make the decisions for your body. It's like
Yeah.
I've been I've been listening to this this book by Obama, and I'm totally blanking out on the name, but he was talking specifically about that. And one thing that kind of stuck with me was that being pro-choice doesn't mean that, you know, everyone has to have an abortion, right? Like
Right.
a feminist, like a
The
middle-aged
woman's right
feminist,
to choose.
it's just the right for someone else to make that choice for themselves, you know. And just as a middle-aged feminist somewhere out there is mourning that abortion that she had to have, or she felt like she had to have, there's a super conservative person out there somewhere thinking of the abortion they paid for their
Right.
young daughter. You know, it
Yeah.
happens.
I was just thinking about, because I saw a little bit of her confirmation, the Supreme Court Judge Amy Barrett, and she said that in her mind, Roe v. Wade was settled law. And one thing I want to get across is that it's not settled law. Like, they could still overturn it and states would be forced to defend it. So I kind of feel like that was a cop-out when she was asked under oath, would she touch it or would she try to overturn it? And even with Obamacare, like, that decision is a week after the election. And she's made comments about, you know, she criticized Justice John Roberts for upholding Obamacare. So I have to wonder, she says she's not on a mission to get rid of Obamacare, but, you know, with those kind of comments, I have to wonder. And that's what is so unfortunate. And that's why it's so crucial to vote for Biden, because we need health care for women, especially. Like I said, we're the most unemployed right now under COVID, so we need, you know, our rights, our reproductive rights, and our health care.
Yeah, especially, and again, tying it back to COVID, right? Like, there could be a family out there that, you know, got pregnant by accident and cannot afford to have another child, or
Exactly.
certain situations where they're telling you, like, your child, it has a birth defect and it could be
Right.
really like life changing, you know, and challenging not only for the child but for the family. And there's families that just cannot afford to be full-time caretakers.
Absolutely.
There's an array of things that could happen, right? Like, not women don't go through abortions because it's fun or they're, you know, as
Traumatic.
birth control. It's a
Yeah.
traumatic event. You know, whether it has happened to you once or twice, you know. And I feel like they're making this case where they're trying to make it seem as if it's just birth control, which is not. And if
Right.
birth control was actually being provided, we
Right.
would be also able to help and support some of these women that are having to have abortions. You know, which in a lot of states it's being challenged as a religious right for employers to not pay for
Yeah.
that kind of healthcare. And even
Exactly.
afterwards, right? There's not a lot of support for women and their children for, you know, during pregnancy. Like, what if this, you know, someone finds out super late term that, you know, their child,
Right.
you know, has a problem, when they could have found out like way early in the pregnancy with an ultrasound or some testing that could have been provided by healthcare. And that's
It's
just
having
so
that
important.
it's having that empathy, just as you said, for other people's situation. And that's one of the things that I wish that a lot of people who make the law, that they would have that in mind. You know, it may not be your situation, but you don't know what else someone else is going through. So that, yeah, I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. Mm-hmm.
And hey, you know what? Life has many, many terms. You
It
don't
does.
know what is around the corner for you, right? Like, just like, you know, some people may not need Obamacare right now. Doesn't mean that you're not going to need it next year or in a few months,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I think having that empathy, or just being able to
Mm-hmm.
take care of the people who need it right now,
Mm-hmm.
is just, I mean, it's what America has been known for, right? Like, we take the poor,
Right.
we take the needy and
Yes,
the ones that need shelter. And
sure.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a little
Right.
selfish, sometimes to just think of what's right in front of your face, and not go beyond, because what is good for your community, it's ultimately good for you and your family.
Right. I
You know,
just saw a comment. Someone said that they were laid off in March and their first thought was, what about healthcare? And absolutely, because, with this pandemic, the restaurant industry just totally tanked, the retail industry. So I can imagine just like thinking of healthcare and thinking you're protected and then all of a sudden not having it
yeah,
and then not having a job and then also not having a stimulus check on top of that. Like people are really trying, they're in the food lines. Um, they're really struggling. They're getting evicted.
yeah. Evictions are,
Mhm.
off the roof right now. And yeah, Cobra, someone, I think it's the same person. Cobra is so expensive, right?
Wow.
And there's still a process in between, right? Like that you may not have healthcare um, while you do that transition, and the
Right.
options are not great, right? And privatizing all of that and just the way that pharma corporations work, it's terrible, right? Like that the medicine that we're getting here, it's so much cheaper in another country, and for what reason?
Right.
Just to make these companies wealthier.
Exactly. That's what it
Um,
is. And
yeah,
that's one of the things I worry about with this vaccine. If we have another 4 years of Trump, I'm wondering if there's a chance that the vaccine will be like if they're going to price gouge it, and the effect that that would have on both of our communities. They can't afford, we can't afford a high vaccine for some, especially because COVID is nobody's fault. So I think the government needs to find a way to pay for that, frankly. It shouldn't be price gouged, and you shouldn't be trying to sell it to the highest bidder either.
yeah, no, it really shouldn't. And it is a world pandemic, right? Like we should be
Mm-hmm.
working with other countries to see what is the best solution, what is working in other places,
Right.
um, and just really unify people and not just let states, go and like, okay, you can open, and just to see what happens, right? Like if
Right.
we are gonna get out of this, it needs to be, everyone needs to align, and be on the same page,
Certainly.
and just like, yeah, stick it out for, whatever month or so. It's like, for example, right now in Victoria, in Australia, people are not allowed to go beyond of like a 5 kilometer radius from their home, because they're like
Wow.
in serious lockdown, right? But their numbers are like 10
See?
a day. It's like, yeah, that's what it takes. And of course, like some people are gonna be hurting economically, but they do make exceptions for frontline workers
Mm-hmm.
and some uh, people that have like very specific jobs, which for the rest of the people, the government is helping them. The government is supporting them. Like the they are giving them unemployment for the ones that can't work, or their places of work are being closed for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's working. So
Yeah.
most likely pretty soon Australia will be fine. Well, they keep the country shut from everyone else,
Right.
that is very likely. um but
Yeah.
like you said, a lot of families of color, most likely, if the price is like $200-$300 a pop, we're not gonna be able to afford that, especially
No.
if we don't have a job, right? Like
Ex-
they're trying to feed the family and pay rent. um
exactly. We definitely need to figure out a way to prioritize both the health and the economy. And that's why I was so convinced with Biden that he's the one to lead us, because, he has pandemic experience with Ebola, and he got us out of the 2008 recession. I was like a junior in high school when that started. And I remember everyone in my college um, in my college years after, we were like so scared because we were like wondering if we were going to have jobs to pay for, tuition and, student loans once we graduated. And him and Obama, they both tag teamed it, and they both, you know, dug us out of the ditch that was left from the prior administration to Obama. And that's who I trust to get us out of this ditch, frankly.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, the economy is not the same. And, this sort of, I'm just trying to think the latest thing this current administration did to tank the stock market. But, just little stuff like that by Trump saying that, he's not going to make a deal with the Democrats for the stimulus package, or he's not going to bail out the airline industry. Little stuff like that is not what's helping our country. Joe and Obama both, they bailed out, GM. So we need that sort of, plan to sort of get us out of the hole that we're in.
Yeah. I mean, it, yeah. I mean, I graduated also from college from around that time when the
Mm-hmm.
economy tanked in like 2008. Was it? Yeah.
Mm.
Um,
Yes.
and yeah, I mean, I did not even start doing what I studied, because there was just no jobs for me at the time. And I had to like stick it out and work in retail and work in the food industry for a
Mm-hmm.
bit. And, I was stuck there for a while until I was actually able to do what I do now, which is work in the creative photo industry. And
Mm-hmm.
there's right now Gen Z, just we don't know what's going to happen to them. Millennials
They've
are still struggling,
they've been
with.
placed behind the eight ball, just like, I'm an older millennial, but we were placed behind the eight ball in 2008, and unfortunately the Gen Zers are as well, because because we haven't handled this COVID crisis in America. They can't go back to school, they can't do internships. Just they had plans for their lives, and now those plans are on hold because this administration didn't take this pandemic seriously, frankly. And yeah, I definitely feel for them, because I'm thinking, most high schoolers, when they graduate, they think they're going to do all these amazing things. And can you imagine having to put those plans on hold and sort of, sacrifice a couple years out of your life when you're still young? Like, that is just unimaginable. So I can't
Yeah,
imagine that.
I mean, all of the people
Mm.
that are struggling with the student loans, right? And that's another great thing, right? And Kamala actually mentioned this during the debates, right? That they want
Mm-hmm.
to, cut at least like 10K from
Yeah,
everyone's student loans, which would be such a good, like,
it would.
amazing help for some people. It's like,
That would be in the world.
oh my God, like that would be amazing.
Yeah,
And so many kids that are coming out with so much student loans, and they can't even go to their college or university right now, right? Like they're not even
right,
getting the full experience of that. And all
right.
of those kids, from our generation that are having to struggle, to make those payments and not have a job right now and
Yeah,
not be able to see their families or going back to live with their parents, but now they're too old to be under their health care.
mm-hmm.
It just piles up, and
Certainly.
it's hard to have all of those challenges, and then on top of that have an administration that is not really making it easier for you, easy for your family, for your older, you know old parents, and then for potentially the kids that you may have or may not have yet. um
Yeah. And if they overturn Obamacare, which is likely to happen, we don't know after this election because the hearing is a week after, you know, kids 26 and under can't stay on their parents' insurance if that is the case. So yeah, they are definitely compounding the problems for Gen Zers, unfortunately. And that's why it's so important for young people to vote, because you need to have a voice for your future. And you're not going to have a future, unfortunately, if you
yeah,
if you sit this one out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And like the number of kids that are eligible to vote for this election, I can't remember the exact number, but it was pretty high from what I remember. Um, and I think, I mean, I can relate, right? Like, again, like, you're a teenager or you're 18, 19, 20, and for most people that age, that politics is not their priority, right? But
Right.
considering where we are right now,
Mm-hmm.
it should be top of mind for everyone, to flip
Yes.
the Senate, and
Yeah.
vote blue and look at what are um, the local props in your city, who is
Mm-hmm.
running for sheriff in your town,
Damn
who is
racist
running for
where it's
judge,
at.
all of those, right? Like they're all,
Mm-hmm.
because they're all gonna make a difference in your community.
Mm-hmm.
If you elect, a sheriff like in Arizona, and I am blanking out on his name again,
Yeah.
um, that is just gonna be, incarcerating people for no like good reason, or just like really
Discrimination, essentially.
yeah, exactly. You need to, because it's just not about the president. It's about Congress. It's about the Senate. It's
Mm-hmm.
about your local leaders and your local props that you have
Mm-hmm.
to be paying attention to. And it takes time. It is like it's a long process to actually be educated in all of those things. But even if you just pick a few, right, or support one of your local
Mm-hmm.
candidates, like that, everything helps. um and with that, I actually would love to move on to like how can people get involved still, right? Like we have 20
Mm-hmm.
days and
I've been phone banking. Like,
phone
yeah,
banking,
that is that
you'd
is the
be
way to do it.
surprised.
You can
you
change
know
swing voters' minds. Like, there's a lot of people still on the fence. They're not sure, and they I've had some success stories of people who were persuaded, because they're just really wondering like what the future holds. And phone banking. What's other ways that you've been?
they can if you don't want to talk to people, that's okay. You can write letters, you can text
Yes,
in, you know
postcard. Yes.
postcards. You can also volunteer for the hotline. That is actually like one of the number one priorities right now, because people have so many questions as to like, how do I get my ballot, how do I fill it out,
Mm-hmm.
um, what are these different things here, or because the rules change from state to state. So volunteer for the hotline or the election protection hotline, which is where people are calling in case they see any red flags, at their polls or their drop boxes. Super important. And and if you yourself have questions, you can always go to iwillvote.com, or
Yeah.
in Spanish, voyavotar.com. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's still time. Like Lynn said, like phone banking in Spanish, in English, in Farsi, in Korean, in Chinese, doesn't matter. We do need bilingual phone bankers and people that can, yeah, just like remind someone like, hey, did you fill out your ballot?
Right.
What is your plan to go vote? Um, some people will want to go and take it to the Dropbox or just by normal mail, and some
Mm-hmm.
will actually want to do the line and vote in person, which if you're
Right.
doing that, I highly recommend that you bring comfortable shoes, you bring water, you bring a chair if you can. One of those camping chairs would be great. Um, music or something to read, because it might be a long line.
And wear a
um,
mask.
and wear a mask, bring
Yeah.
hand sanitizer, like be
Yeah.
mindful of, staying 6 feet away from people. Again, this is to protect yourself, your family, and those around you.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and if you want more information, like feel free to reach out to myself, to Latinas for Biden, to the Women of Color Coalition,
Yes.
or Women for Biden. Like we are here. We
Mm-hmm.
answer questions from people that DM us, and a lot of this information we're posting like every day. Whether it's phone banking opportunities, reminding people of the phone number to call if they have questions, any speakers that we may have, But yeah, like what else, Lynn?
And you all are really the leaders, all of our viewers. You're the leaders in your community. So, take our information and tell your friends and family because, people sort of emulate what they see. And if you're setting the precedent by, um, getting your ballot turned in or going to vote in person and wearing a mask and, you know, staying there in line for however long it takes, you're really setting the precedent. And that's what it's going to take to win this election.
Yeah, tell your family, tell your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Even I know they're gonna get sick of it. I know my friends are getting sick of it. Um, but tell your friends. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, think about it this way, right? Like when you're less likely to believe a Yelp review than if your friend or your family member tells you like, "Hey, this restaurant was so good," or "This thing
Exactly.
that I bought is so good," right? Like then most likely they're gonna trust you. They're gonna hear you. So the percentage of chances that they'll go and make a plan, sit down with them if you have the time and just like go through the steps. We have checklists on our
Mm-hmm.
Instagram's account that you can borrow. If you have a question about how to make a plan, reach out to us, like we're here
Message.
for you.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
answer
exactly.
there. Yeah,
um
yeah.
but yeah, well, Lynn, sorry, why did I call you Liz? There's a lot of Liz's though in our group.
I know
um
a few Liz's. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I actually do know a few. Thank you so much for talking into
Aw.
us. And I really hope that everyone out there just really feels the urgency of this
Mm-hmm.
election. I know you guys keep seeing it on memes and whatnot online, but this election is really a turning point for our lives, for what's to come, for our communities to really thrive or not. And it's just, even if you can't vote,
Mm-hmm.
you can still be part of this. You can still
Yes,
volunteer.
you
You
still have
can
a
still be a
voice.
poll worker. You still have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you guys so much for listening. And
Yeah,
let us know. We're here for you. We can provide
yeah.
all the help, all the answers. So thank you so much, and we will see you guys online on Instagram and more.
All right. Thank you so much
Bye.
for having
Thank
me.
you, Lynn. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.